Hi, this is Brian Hopkins, the Exhausted Moderate. Here's a short video I prepared from my latest investigation into a term that is making the news, but you might not know much about: private credit. You need to understand what it is and how to balance the risk versus the returns for this new investment now authorized for your retirement account. And here is the big deal. If you think you are not already exposed to the substantial risk of this investment, think again. Watch this short video and press your representatives to pass legislation that forces more transparency and protection for ordinary investors like you and me. As always, read my full case file investigation for the details. And please support this publication by subscribing. Now, let's get into the facts and apply our common sense.
For decades, one corner of the financial world delivered consistent 9 to 12% annual returns. It's called private credit, a system where companies bypass traditional banks to borrow directly from massive investment funds. But if you had a standard 401k, you were legally locked out. These returns were reserved for pension funds, university endowments, and the ultra-wealthy. Regulators maintained that lockout for one specific reason: illiquidity. In private credit, the fund manager decides exactly when and whether you are allowed to withdraw your cash. Unlike stocks or bonds, you cannot simply exit these positions on demand. That wall came down in August 2025. Executive Order 14330 directed federal agencies to change the rules, officially clearing these high-yield private credit funds for 401k plans under the banner of democratizing access. By doing so, the government intentionally connected ordinary savers to an investment architecture that legally prevents them from accessing their money during an emergency. 6 months after that order was signed, the market seized. Major private credit funds began locking their doors to investors. In February 2026, Blue Owl halted withdrawals entirely. An estimated $5 billion of investor capital was instantly trapped behind the fund's gates. A month later, Blackstone faced a record $3.7 billion in exit requests from its flagship fund. To keep the fund stable while meeting those redemptions, Blackstone executives had to inject $400 million of their own cash. This rapid collapse is the result of a system working exactly as intended. It is a predictable design failure, born from placing an institutional mechanism in a retail environment. To see why the system is stalling, we have to look at the defensive shield built into these funds: the quarterly redemption gate. These funds hold little cash. If too many withdraw at once, managers drop a gate, trapping capital to prevent a bank run. Institutions plan decades ahead, making this limit manageable. But workers face unpredictable emergencies, needing immediate liquidity these funds aren't legally required to provide. Layering a product designed to lock money away onto a population that requires immediate liquidity creates a structural friction the retirement system wasn't built to handle. Why are the current investors rushing for the exits and triggering these gates in the first place? Direct lending funds now hold a 26% concentration in a single industry: enterprise software. Software companies are currently shifting from selling annual seats to selling outcomes. That transition breaks the predictable revenue models these loans were based on, making many of the original debt covenants obsolete. While official defaults are at 5.8%, researchers at Morningstar found that 94% of distressed loans in this space are being resolved through restructuring. Lenders are quietly amending terms and deferring payments to avoid the default label. This hidden stress is forcing early institutional investors to flee. They're triggering the gates today, which will ultimately trap the 401k money flowing in tomorrow. The political debate in Washington has focused on whether workers should have access to private credit in the future, but that misses a shocking present-day reality. Federal Reserve data reveals that workers are already exposed to private credit through $2.5 trillion in life insurance annuities. The Fed finds that life insurers' current exposure to risky corporate debt exceeds their exposure to subprime mortgages right before the 2008 crash. This systemic risk is already secretly embedded in American retirement accounts, entirely hidden from monthly statements. The only mechanism capable of protecting savers from this structural mismatch is a pending implementation rule from the Department of Labor. That rule, the document meant to dictate necessary disclosures and liquidity protections, has not yet been published, leaving workers exposed without a safety net. Until the Department of Labor finalizes these rules, democratization means everyday savers are inheriting the severe timing risks of billionaire fund managers. You should know exactly what is in your portfolio before a manager decides you aren't allowed to leave.
Thanks for watching. Hopefully you learned something. I did in preparing this research. If you found this valuable, check out my other investigations, podcasts, and video on my Substack, The Exhausted Moderate. Until next time.